Niladri, I want to ask you, globally, especially the West, you see an aging population. India, on the other hand, is a young and thriving country. So for young people here who want to sort of explore the GCC space, get into it, and kind of have a trajectory like you, perhaps, what would your sort of advice be for them?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I think COVID has done some good stuff and COVID has done some not so good stuff. As long as I remember it, and I cut my hands on Wall Street. Is all of us in our careers learn from somebody side by side, and we learned. I spent a lot of my time with mainframes because a lot of Wall Street's back-end machinery is on mainframes. Never once questioned the technology. I was learning the business. So my only thing will be is to the young generation is focus on the so what, focus on the business, focus on the problem. You're good enough to find a solution, and there are many solutions. But the harder yards we put on the problem context, the harder yards we put, and that is where I think we have to recognize that the GCC context, in the context of the global context, is a lot of people who've been in the industry for a long time. Yeah, they might not have the agility to be able to do the solutioning faster, but they definitely would be the best to be able to be the proxy to the problem context. So collaboration is a very important thing, and not just this whole working from home, working from hybrid. The more you get to connect, the more you get to learn, the more you get to sit side by side and say how you've done it. And those are small things that are important and should be reinforced as must-have things in the go forward.
Hi Niladri, thanks so much for joining us here today. I want to start by asking you this chatter I've been hearing around the term GCC. Some people seem to take offense to the term, saying that global companies just call it our India center or whatever. Why need a name like that? Wanted to get your thoughts on this.
That's a good start. I think we have moved from a gigantic to a ginormous hyper on both AI and GCC. I think one leads the other. My 2 cents to that is, first is I think from a narrative shaping point of view, it allows to be able to look at the growth that's happening in a lot of organizations that are setting up capability centers everywhere, to put a phrase into this and be able to look at best practices, operating principles, and even from a policy and procedures point of view, taxation point of view, you can look at that as one holistic brand. And I think that's good. Having said that, not to get ahead of itself, this has been happening for quite some time in different shapes and forms.
Correct.
And I think we're just at this position where it's like this Dashavatar, and we can discuss which avatar are we in. But beyond setting up a back office, to say, now I've set up this non-differentiating function, let's now start putting Six Sigma to optimize it and go on and so on and so forth. And now to being, what I would call co-creators of value and co-creators to any other location in the world. We are in that, I would say, third avatar, probably. And I'm generalizing it a bit. And that puts interesting dimensions in terms of what's happening generally in the industry, macro and micro aspects, which I'm sure we'll talk about. That has got interesting connotations. So I have a feeling about this is very good that we have this term, omnibus term, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, because this is a step in the journey.
Sure.
And this is a long step in the journey.
Right. And the evolution that you talked about, that in itself is fascinating, right? From back offices and cost centers to now hubs of innovation, right? And you've been at a vantage point throughout all these years. How have you seen this kind of journey evolve personally?
So before we get to the hubs of innovation, right, when we say the word center, right, the center of what? It's like, if you look at a human body, can your heart function without the kidney and without the intestines and without so we're all part of a subsystem out here. So the way I see this is, at the end of the day, and I speak this, I'm part of a private equity setup, and so we look at our EBIT and our ARRs very carefully, and your ARR is also looked with respect to what accounts you retain, and all the new stuff that you do has to create net new ARR with terms of new logos, and these principles apply to any firm anywhere you are in the world. And in Flexera, we kind of sit between the multitude of all the technology buyers and sellers in the world, reimagining how technology is bought, sold, managed, and secured. So my perspective is, the fastest motion to success, and innovation is one lever to that, is being able to align the objectives that you have into the strategic objectives that the firm has, which hopefully aligns with where the industry is headed in terms of its North Star. So you have Horizon 1, 2, 3. You have product companies having portfolios of what is run the bank, can build the bank, transform the bank. So the ability to kind of understand the work that you do and how that connects with those strategic objectives, and finally mirroring into the so what for the customer. Eventually, you're doing this for a reason. The customer has to like what you do, and it has to translate to something material in terms of the customer's win and then your win, as a provider. So to me, the vectors of delivery manifesting into the vectors of innovation that creates unprecedented shareholder value and customer value, hopefully keeping the voice of engagement at the highest, to me is the secret sauce.
Right. And tell us a little bit about your journey and how you sort of got into the GCC space in the first place.
So personally, I think I've had the privilege of very middle class background, family with strong values. Lived in Calcutta, partly brought up in Calcutta, partly brought up in fast life of Bombay. Professionally, spent some time in Hyderabad, and now in Bangalore for the last 7 years, and spent time professionally traveling all over the world. At the time I had 70 stamps on my passport for a year, traveling across 3 continents. So learned a lot through context, spending time in context. And as far as I remember it, even before the word fintech had come in, I had got a fascination for finance and technology, as a combination discipline. So much so that in my engineering days, I used to be so fascinated by accounts that I used to wonder, and this is at a time when Tally and these accounting practices are built, that when you have simple rules of accounts, why can't I codify it? Why can't I have neural networks look at transactions and see where to post? And how does that affect the balance sheet and what to do next? So I was pretty fascinated with that, which is why I had a pretty long career on the fintech side, working on capital markets, wealth management, asset management, being a consumer of technology, then moving into a technology role, where you go on the other side and you're like, okay, wait a minute, as a consumer, you kind of don't care. You're looking at the financials without realizing, as you move from capex to opex, and I'm talking now the cloud shift, you've got to be slightly more diligent in terms of how you look at your operating discipline. And then on the technology side, as you're delivering this, you're trying to create maximum value, but you also have to keep the customer's context in mind, that finally whatever you're doing could be the cool thing, but eventually what business problem does it solve? So my journey has been a lot about being fascinated about business problems, doing it with a collective muscle. I've been a huge fan of finding the best of everybody has a secret nerve that wants them to be special. So unlocking that special nerve to be able to create special value is what has been driving my North Star for as many years as I can think of it.
And this interest in technology, did that start early? Is there any interesting anecdote there from your childhood or anything?
I mean, the only thing I can think about is, this comes back to the, we'll talk about this later, is there are so many different tools to solve the same problem, I mean, we can look at, just in an organization itself, you have a Power BI and a Tableau and a Click, and then you've got we've got Zoom and you've got Teams, you've got WebEx, So I've always been fascinated about not the technology per se, but how is the technology solving the business problem per se, a unit, a use case,
right?
And then how does it scale from there? So scaling for me is a big thing, and in scale comes resilience, comes a lot of angles about repeatability and reuse. So what fascinates me is, how can you do a 1 + 1 = 3? Because finally, versus putting bodies at a problem, the only thing I think where technology has magic is technology can, you do it once, you do it twice, the third time onwards, it bolts on its own. So and that's where I think AI comes in, as an interesting twist to this whole conversation. But what has fascinated me for a long time is about how do you look at patterns, how do you look at outliers, how do you recognize things that from a user experience are the most important things in terms of how you drive behavior. And how does technology enable all that?
Sure. You spoke about use cases, and as they say, the proof of the pudding obviously lies in the eating, right? So at Flexera, anything that stands out for you where you've sort of your center where you think is driving innovation and adding value globally?
So let me talk a bit about what I believe is the muscle we have created, and then we'll talk a bit about the outcomes, because as one of the people I admire, Dhoni, says, the process, if you do the process the right way, then the outcomes will follow. So what we've done is, as any other organization, we've grown inorganically. We had a massive 2 acquisitions in the last 2 years. It's a firm that had its best year ever last year. It was by way of no coincidence that coincided with a lot of the stuff that was being driven from the India operation as an indistinguishable part of the global organization. And I think what has happened in the operating muscle is we've been able to create a fabric by way of which I'm a huge fan of Edward de Bono's lateral thinking principles, that if you can figure out a way where people who are close to the problem are able to work with people who want to solve it, and they could be in different parts of the globe. If you have an innovation process that connects the two, and in a way excitingly connects the voice of the customer also, then you created a muscle that is second to none. And I mean, in our context, imagine, we just did an acquisition from NetApp. We put the Spot team in, and we just launched a global hackathon that was being driven from India. And it was fascinating to see the people who had just joined, who had a problem to be solved in Israel, with the customer success for the product portfolio who was sitting in the US, solved by an engineer in India, an SME in Sweden. We were able to unlock value and create something which was an aspirational backlog for 2026 and bring it into the equation now. And that to me is huge, because now we've done this a few times, and we also we'll talk about the AI piece a bit. We are adopting and using AI at scale as part of that to make everybody relevant, not just 1 or 2 people. And I'm very proud of that, because that allows us to be able to create very global muscle.
Correct.
But everybody has got something to contribute on, and not everybody is going to be able to do the same thing. By way of use cases, we are specializing. We are leaders in the magic quadrants in the areas we are in on technology spend and risk management, cloud, on-prem, SaaS, AI. And I'll give you a very simple thing. 2 simple things that we've been able to do is, one is, like you look at any enterprise, and every enterprise buys licenses. You could have Microsoft Office, Visio, so many licenses you have, and every license comes with some level of documentation around rights of use. How can you use it? How many users? Not even counting agents as users or whatever it is. And like, what are the pricing bands that actually go? What vendors you can use? When do you have obsolescence if the version is going to be? And this is just an entitlements or rules part. Okay. And now underpinning that on the procurement side are contracts, POs, invoices on transactions, right? You wouldn't believe, but most enterprises in the world, because we see it, are doing this work manually. Okay, so when you actually have job additions and subtractions, and you have these scenarios and all, it becomes very difficult to know who is actually using what.
Sure.
Who's spinning up what instance for what. And we've recognized this problem, so we've figured out a framework to be able to do AI-based entitlement ingestion at scale. Going into interesting use cases that we are in our roadmap about AI-based contract ingest, because you have to start looking at how these lock in. What's on the contract? What's on the PO? What are the transactional invoice? What are you entitled to? Who is using it? Who's not using it? What does it come at what cost and what features? An example I told you, right? You could be having different software solving the same problem.
Correct.
And these cause application sprawls in the company, because it's not necessary for you to have 5 different tools doing the same thing. If you knew how we're using it, where the costs are, where the risks are. So from AI-based entitlement ingest to application sprawl management and application rationalization, we are driving the AI machinery end to end, which is solving an industry problem with one combination vector, AI-driven, that has got a lot of the horsepower being led from India, with global cohorts supporting it from product management to customer success and SMEs all together, where I think with one vector we are able to solve multiple problems. And I'm taking that as one example from many. Sure. The other one is on hybrid. We're also people who wouldn't even know that you might think pay as you go. Sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that you have a bring your own license that you could actually have from on-prem, and that would cost you less than pay as you go, which is a hybrid use case.
Right.
And again, that has got powered, from what we have done. And these are one of several things where we are solving deep industry problems. And the fact that it's happening from India is strategically an intentional way of how we've designed this.
Sure.
So I'll take a pause. I said a lot.
Yeah. You spoke about AI. What is the general view at Flexera? Are you trying to kind of incorporate AI in every function? What's the overall kind of view on this whole? And there's a lot of noise out there, right? How are you sort of filtering the noise and kind of picking up the real signals there?
So let me talk about the two sides of this coin, and why this responsible ethical AI is something we should be, because you don't know when the next CrowdStrike incident is going to happen, and all this ginormous hype we talked about with AI could lead you into doing things for the sake of doing things without understanding what value it is, without realizing that from a security and a vulnerability point of view, or even a sustainability point of view, you are causing different aspects of ROI problems that could really hit you on the
There
long
could be a ripple effect.
Yes, and there's a very interesting thing called the AI triad. The fraud triad. The fraud triad, if I remember it, and it's got some vectors, 3 vectors. The triad had, I think, pressure, opportunity, and rationalization as to why frauds are caused.
Okay.
There's a 4th dimension that has been added in a recent white paper, which I really like, is what they call technical opacity. And technical opacity is nothing but a black box, right? So in the world of AI, if you can't explain what the AI is doing, then there's zero accountability. You have a trust but verify mechanism, and when things go good is good, when things go bad in the realm of audits, explainability, and I just talked about CrowdStrike, for example, things can go horribly wrong. So our position has been, we are the voice of, I would say, reason in the industry, to be able to say, whatever you're doing, do you know what is it costing you? And in the panel discussion yesterday, I talked about the fact that while cloud spend and AI spend is close to 700 billion, 300 billion, AI and cloud wastage is a 500 billion market, and that's growing faster. So obviously, whatever you're spending on, you're not really using it correctly. You could use an SLM, why use an LLM, for example. For AI spends, are you aware of what are the costs of inferencing and training? Because you could be training in some data with and then as you move to production, the data sets have changed, and the cost creep has kind of gone up. Cost of compute, cost of inferencing, and so on and so forth. So our position has been to be able to look at this. The FinOps Foundation has a fantastic framework, which we are partnering with them and a big cohort of companies that are doing it, to look at unit economics at a very micro level. And our position is to the industry is to look at those unit economics with a lot of care, because if you don't look at those, then even leading the ROI conversation alone, you will be in a very different vector on doing actions that, necessarily speaking, you could have avoided if you had looked at the details in the first place. Having said that, I'll also tell you where I think AI has, we've rolled out, we're one of the few companies, I think, which have rolled out Copilot. I mean, there's Copilot, there's Cursor, there's Claude, there are many of them, responsibly across the whole organization. Few companies where adoption and usage is at a very high clip. And as I said, we are as strong as our weakest link. We are enabling our best engineers to be even better. And we already have proof points over the fact that our engineers are globally are using it. We've got these collaboration learnings in such a way that best practices are going to the point where some of the smartest engineers have a buddy that are able to help them out in generating more efficiency buckets for them to do more high-end work. So I have, my feeling is it's got limitless opportunity and limitless risk. And we are playing ourselves as a delicate dance in the middle of both, for the few companies who have AI front and center of our strategy. And I talked about OKRs, objectives and key results. There are OKRs, there are VSEMs. We have OKRs where we are able to work them with our customers, customer advisory boards, customer partner councils, and operating paradigm we've created in India to have our engineers work closer to our customers, where it's not deckware, it's actual, we're actually showing them stuff on the roadmap.
Right.
And knock out items on the roadmap faster.
Sure. If I were to ask you from a personal standpoint, what is it that excites you about AI the most, and what kind of worries you and keeps you at night? Would the answer be similar to what you're saying?
Yes, I think the nature of the job lets me look at the industry on both sides. But I am, one part of me gets extremely concerned about using it the right way. And one part of me is wildly excited about the possibilities there may be, because there is no reason to believe that if not done well, 20% of what is causing 80% of the pain can actually be taken out, which leaves organizations free to attack growth.
Yeah.
Versus look at EBIT, which also means you don't, if you do this intelligently. Goldman Sachs has launched Devin. We are recently in the process of, we've got a bunch of graduates, but we also launched a new agent called Nirva, which is moving pretty fast. And we might not need to hire as many people now, because if you do it properly, you will probably have a mix of human developers in the loop with AI agents that are learning from each other.
Sure. And I also wanted to ask you, Niladri, the fact that India has emerged as this GCC hub, what is it that you think has been the main driver for this? Is it the talent? Is it something more? If you could share your perspective on this.
So, India is like, if you're riding the India tiger, you ride the tiger. Right? And I think we got to also step back a bit about, I think, from a policy making point of view, and what our leaders have done over the past few generations to be able to create that demand where people see value is second to none, which is the reason why, nobody's giving business because, somebody likes somebody's face. There's some reason why business is coming out here. I think what has changed, obviously, two other things is, one is a lot of the community of most companies' customers, either decision makers or users, also sitting in the ecosystem around it. Okay, so suddenly and we just talked about, the closer you bring the voice of delivery to the voice of customer, suddenly more magic happens. Sure. You don't need to go around the, hopping, pit stopping across the whole world for that. That's one big change. Second big change is scale. Okay, you can obviously, this is even before AI made its full listing. You can obviously hire far more talent out here. At various levels of the food chain, in terms of, and the kind of entrepreneurial drive that you have in India is also second to none.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of things have come together for that. Having said that, there's work to be done, because as I just said, with what's happening, from a talent point of view, engineering courses, degrees will have to be relooked at now, because technology has become so simple now that even people who are not fluent in technology but fluent with business acumen,
right,
would be able to leverage technology for the right reasons. So there's a shift that's happening out there. The faster the next pivot is made towards mastering business acumen in the new context, I think will be the order of the day.
Okay. And you spoke about scaling. So when we talk about scaling talent for Flexera to kind of accelerate innovation, what does that look like?
So the company is growing, or obviously our headcount is also growing, but we don't think our headcount will grow as necessarily needs to grow. Like, I don't in my role ask for headcount, because I believe that you first need to find your ways and means to make your teams more productive. And we are investing, as I said, we are investing in giving people tools, finding the connection muscle to ensure we don't have this. We have silos helping each other, cross silos. Most of the vectors are horizontal, and we are obviously investing in technology, good technology that allows you to be able to federate AI, federate data, democratize data in AI as much as possible. And there are tools out there, and obviously we apply unit economics as part of that. So, our thing is, and we have a simple philosophy: whatever is working, do more of it.
Okay.
Whatever is not working, start looking at the data. We have a value called keeping score,
okay,
which is embedded in the DNA of what we do. We keep score very diligently, and our operative DNA has been about ensuring how quickly can you move from POC to POV. You can keep doing proof of concept. Where's the proof of value?
Right.
And once you prove the value, how do you ensure you do this on a platform basis across an enterprise context? So we are focusing on those outcomes as the focused end outcomes, and whatever gets us to that the fastest will be the vector.
Sure. And lastly, Niladri, I want to ask you, globally, especially the West, you see an aging population. India, on the other hand, is a young and thriving country. So for young people here who want to sort of explore the GCC space, get into it, and kind of have a trajectory like you perhaps, what would your sort of advice be for them?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I think COVID has done some good stuff, and COVID has done some not so good stuff. As long as I remember it, and I cut my hands on Wall Street. Is all of us in our careers learn from somebody side by side, and we learned. I spent a lot of my time with mainframes because a lot of Wall Street's back-end machinery is on mainframes. Never once questioned the technology. I was learning the business. So my only thing will be is to the young generation is focus on the so what, focus on the business, focus on the problem. You're good enough to find a solution, and there are many solutions. But the harder yards we put on the problem context, the harder yards we put, and that is where I think we have to recognize that the GCC context, in the context of the global context, is a lot of people who've been in the industry for a long time. Yeah, they might not have the agility to be able to do the solutioning faster, but they definitely would be the best to be able to be the proxy to the problem context. So collaboration is a very important thing, and not just this whole working from home, working from hybrid. The more you get to connect, the more you get to learn, the more you get to sit side by side and say, how have you done it? And those are small things that are important and should be reinforced as must-have things in the go forward.
I think that's great advice. Niladri, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Lovely speaking with you as well, and thanks for the opportunity.